like doing anything. I just wanna lay in my bed. Don't feel like picking up my phone, so leave a message at the tone. 'Cause today I swear I'm not doing anything.
Gentle loving hugs, and thanks for turning in to the Fibro Friends radio show here on healthinforadio.com, part of the Entertainment Global Media Network, broadcasting out of heavenly Clearwater, Florida. If you feel like doing nothing at all today, then just sit back or lie down. We're here to educate you with a full spectrum of information on fibro, advocate on the behalf of all Fibro Friends for fibro awareness and the need for more research, and support each other with laughter and love. New to fibro? Wonder what it is? Fibromyalgia is a complex chronic disorder involving a malfunction in how the brain processes pain, which leads to other multiple dysfunctions in the body. Some of the main symptoms of fibro are pain and fatigue, sleep disorder, memory and concentration, depression, digestive disorders, hypersensitivity. So today, you've tuned into Fibro Friends. So please welcome your host, Laura Rosa.
Hi, and welcome to another show of Fibro Friends. And my guest speaker tonight is Jessie, and I am Laura Rosa. And Jessie, say hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
We haven't heard from you in a while. How have you been doing?
Well, pretty well. I had a period of remission, which I'm sure our listeners are familiar with.
Yes, very much.
A bit of reprieve from the usual pain and fatigue for maybe about 6 weeks this time, which is longer than usual. One of those things where you spend a great deal of time suffering, and then all of a sudden, everything seems all right for an unpredictable period of time before the cycle starts all over again.
And do you know what triggered you back into a fibro, non-functioning, back into the fibro world?
No, I was, several things took place that I thought may have resulted in the remission. My doctor put me on 60 milligrams of Cymbalta in the morning.
Okay.
And I had a series of 12 acupuncture treatments.
Oh, good.
And they end at the end of December.
Okay.
And about the last 2 weeks of it is when I started feeling much, much better.
Great.
And then I have a new love interest, and I think that was an inspiration.
I think that may have a big role in your health making a turn up emotionally. When you've got that excitement going on in your life, that can really boost your hormones naturally without having supplements to step in. Would you agree?
I think so, definitely.
Well, congratulations on that one. That's a
big
step.
Thank you.
Which goes to show those who have fibro who feel that their life will never have things like new relationships in there. That is, for those believers, that is not true. We have no idea what tomorrow holds for us. So prepare today for what it is that you desire, and you never know what'll show up. So that puts you in a much brighter place.
Well, definitely. I'm starting the last few days. I've had some pain again.
Yeah.
I think the acupuncture may have had a great deal to do with my feeling better, or the combination of things.
Good.
And perhaps I need to go back to that. But my mood has continued to be bright and optimistic. I really considered this opportunity of meeting someone to be almost a miracle. I was
Great.
honestly ready to go to a nursing home. I was, for assisted living. I was
Yes.
making the arrangements.
I recall.
because I couldn't take care of my housekeeping and my cooking and my laundry and my dishes. And then I met this person about the time I started to feel a little better. And it really, I was so shocked and surprised. So I think the message there is just don't ever give up, even when you think that the only thing in life you want is peace and comfort.
Yes.
And you're ready to hang it up to try to get that and nothing else. People can walk into your life, or you can meet them just by chance, and
Absolutely.
it's a whole new world.
It's so much nicer to share your life with someone than it is to spend it alone, I believe. I truly believe that. And to find someone who can acclimate to our environment and our needs, it's we have to go through a few more filtering systems than the average person. So I commend you on having an open mind and not shutting that door so that that person had the opportunity to show up. So that's amazing. That's the best news. I'm just so happy for you.
Well, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So I know with the holidays behind us now, which I must say I'm a bit relieved, but that can be a time of defining our relationships as the holidays approached. Where am I going to be? Where, do we have family issues going on, conflict? It's a time where people are expected at some level to acknowledge their relationships in their lives, be it a small, even mailing a card to spending Christmas dinner. And it can be sometimes painful when you look around and maybe realize that you really don't have the support system that you used to have. And that can be bring on a lot more depression and anxiety. And I think it's important that we spend time to talk about relationships, and we may have to be a little more tolerant and more open minded, but they are so important. And if we can find people who are willing to learn and listen and understand our disorder, then we're dealing with people who will be good for us. So, does your new love inspiration have fibromyalgia?
No,
Okay.
no.
So was that a bit of
Um,
a challenge, or
and
how's that working out?
pardon me.
Is that being a bit of a challenge, or how's that working out?
I'm fortunate. I feel like she's very understanding
Uh huh.
and accepting of wherever I am.
That's a good person.
Um,
Yes.
at least thus far that's how it's been, and from what I know of her, I really believe it'll continue to be that way.
Wonderful.
Um, it's extremely difficult for people that have no knowledge of the illness or who have not experienced it themselves, because we're so changeable.
Yep.
It's like we even fool ourselves for a long time.
Yes, we
When
do.
these remissions come about, you initially think, oh my, it's over, it's done. I can do all these things. I mean, I have all this equipment to help me walk, but last week I took a long walk on the beach completely unaided.
That's
And
fabulous. That just
I
goes
know,
with our
well,
disorder.
it happens.
It
It
does.
just
It will
happens.
give us a break once in a while.
Yeah, you get a break for a while.
Don't know
And then
why.
you go back to the cane and the walker and the crutches I mean, I even have a power chair ordered for me.
Has that come in?
It's not here yet,
Okay.
but 6 weeks ago I was ready for it.
I recall you were getting your car all set up, but you were really
Right.
unable to function and walk and move around on your own anymore. I remember you being at, the lowest point that since I've known you. Your spine
Right.
was not able to hold your body. And whatever's
Right.
changed, it's given you the energy and the strength to be able to walk without assistance just goes with fibromyalgia, and people may find that a strange response, but we are not your typical patient. We do not respond like typical people do to our medications or our modalities or whatever, and we're not that predictable, really. And even to ourselves, we may get surprised, or we may get disappointed as well when we don't respond to certain things like most people do. So,
Well, I think it particularly that, if nothing else, makes relationships difficult
it definitely
because
adds another level of a
you have an
challenge.
invisible
Yes.
illness. People can't see what's wrong with you.
Right.
And one day you're hobbling around with a walker, and the next day you're strolling the beach.
Yes. And they're like, come on. You just want attention. You're a malingerer. I mean, we've said all this before on past shows. But the truth is, our bodies are allowing us to do that today. And
Well,
tomorrow,
and
it
you
may
question
not.
yourself for a long time.
Huh?
You question yourself for a long time as well.
Absolutely. And, even though the holidays were stressful, there was my body was doing better. I didn't need to use my walker hardly at all. I had more energy. I don't know if it's because I was really making sure to take all my supplements and vitamins. I mean, let's speculate all day long. We're not going to know. And then 4 days ago, I didn't want to get out of bed because the pain was too horrendous. I don't know what changed from that last day of being great, where I could get out of my car and go get the mail without feeling that intense knife stabbing in the lower back, to there it is, here it is again. Why? I don't know. We can talk about the weather plays a role, but I know stress is a big cause. But even at my more stressful times, I was physically doing well. So I was very fortunate for that. I don't know why that was all about. But the more people we can enroll into our environment, into our world, the better it's going to be for our health, at
Right,
whatever
right.
level, whether it's
And
siblings,
yet sometimes
friends.
we lose relationships because
Yeah.
people don't understand, or they get tired of hearing about it,
Yeah. Yep.
or
I don't blame
tired of
them.
your limitations or your unpredictability. Uh, Other times we are just so incapacitated for such a long period of time, or it takes so much effort just to keep up with the daily requirements of living, like getting to the grocery store and whatever
Right.
you have to do, doctor's appointments, that you never get to the point where you can actually get out and meet people.
It can keep you from doing that. I think that my mood was so stressed out. I took on more than I really should have, and I had a team, but they were people with fibro, and they had their issues, and they weren't able to follow through with some of the support I needed, and my mood was down, and I had to go back and do some major apologizing, and I was totally out of line. I was rude and not courteous, and in my head at the time I was justifying it. But when I was able to step back, and it did take another person that was neutral in my world saying, I don't think you're being really fair here. You really need to reevaluate. And I said, I need to trust that person because I know they're somebody important to me and I am to them. And I went to that person that I had very little patience and I said, I am really sorry. That's not really who I am. And I like to think of myself as a person who's loving, listening, understanding, and compassionate. And I was none of those things for you. And I made that person's life really stressful, more than that person needed to cope with at the time as well. And now everything is back in harmony, and I feel so much better. And I know she does too. So
Right.
it takes a lot to get me at that high of stress, but it did. And I did the right thing. My old pattern would have been shut the door, lock it, run, cut him off. and just
Right.
keep on going. And it was an odd feeling for me to turn around and confront that situation, and it was amazing how open-minded and forgiving that person was and understanding. So I did a little growing in that area, and I just think that I feel like I don't want to grow anymore there. It's too painful. I don't want to do that. So I have to continually monitor my temper and my stress and say that's not about them. It's all about me.
Well,
So
good for you.
thanks.
That's a difficult thing to recognize, and it
Yeah.
takes a lot of courage to go back and try to heal wounds that you feel responsible for, and
Yeah.
trust that the other person will be receptive.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
They may say, "Too bad, so sad. I don't think I trust you anymore," and
right.
then you feel so vulnerable. But get over yourself and do it. Really, you can't get it any worse than it is. If you shut the door and run, that shadow goes with you your entire life. In my
That's
past,
right.
that's been my experience. I'll think about that person and that, I may have shut the door on and think, I wonder how they are.
Hmm.
And I really did find so much about them that I really enjoyed, and that really wasn't the right way to deal with it. And I have gone back in history. I'm talking back, people I knew in high school, and cleaned up a few of things, but my goal is not to create any more issues where I have to go back and redeem myself. So
Right.
it's being true to
It's
myself.
difficult for us because
Yeah.
I think there are a number of things that come into play, and part of it is that we don't always feel so great, and the pain and fatigue can be so consuming that
Yes.
we come across as irritable or disinterested, our concentration's affected,
Yep.
and people feel misunderstood.
Yep.
Sometimes they definitely are, or they think that we're being irritable with them when in fact we're just miserable and our voices are kind of sharp
Right.
because it reflects what we're experiencing physically.
Yep.
Um, I think it's always a good idea when we are tempted to be angry or short-tempered with people to stand back and take a look at it,
Yes.
talk to somebody that's neutral that you can trust, that knows you,
That's so
to sort
key.
of help you get some clarity on the situation
Right.
before you approach someone with a negative challenge of some kind.
Absolutely. Or you could really be stepping into a beehive.
Right, and also in terms of how you interpret what other people say and do.
Right. Our
Um,
filtering system.
because we're edgy, we're sensitive when
Mm-hmm.
we're miserable.
Yep.
And, anyone can understand that.
Of
Um,
course.
so just so we don't, read a slight where it's not intended. The other thing
Right.
is, uh, you know, since we do have a tendency to be isolated,
Mm-hmm.
especially those of us that are a little more introverted to begin with, um, and those of us that are alone, when we do find people, we have to be really careful not to cling to them too hard and
Yes.
scare them away.
That's another
Uh,
that's another outcome that can happen. Right.
yeah, I think especially those of us who try to convince ourselves that we're not lonely and we don't mind being alone, and suddenly we're not, and we think, oh my God, this is what I've been missing,
And you're so hungry for it. Friendship,
Yeah, yeah,
companionship, right. The person may feel
right.
smothered because their life had been going along fine, and they're not ready to turn their life over to just you. They still
Well,
have
sure.
their other life, right. And it's hard to
Well,
keep it in perspective.
Well, and also, to build your own life as much as you possibly can. And
Putting
it's difficult
yes,
because, it's not always easy to make promises and to keep commitments and to get involved in things and know that you're going to be able to follow through because
right.
it's going to be an up and down kind of life.
Yes,
And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, but you have to maintain your interests, your hobbies, your connections so that you're not overly dependent on, any one or few people, um, uh, so that, you can stand back and appreciate the rest of your life and let that person have the rest of their life
right,
and try to appreciate the other people and things that they have and not need to be the center of everything all the time in
right.
order to feel secure and safe and comfortable.
You cannot depend on other people to give that to you. You've got to find that within yourself.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Now, I think we should touch on marriage too. Running a support group, yeah, I've so many varieties of situations have come up, and when two people get married and they're healthy and they have their lives thinking they're going to go down this certain road, and then all of a sudden one partner gets fibromyalgia, that's a bum rap for that marriage, especially if they're already having children. And, we know what the person with the fibromyalgia is going through, but we also need to consider what the spouse is going through and how they're going to feel cheated of losing part of their spouse and having to pick up more of the workload and how difficult that can be and a strain that can put on a marriage.
Definitely. There's, the economic factor if you
Yeah,
suddenly have to stop working and then
right,
your spouse or partner has to assume the financial
right.
responsibility for your livelihood
And take
or
more
the care
role
of
in the
the children
kids
of the household or
and
whatever it may be.
it's you've sometimes
Um,
become a half a person or less. And then to keep the relationship alive while going through this physical challenge, that can be very, very difficult. And I know there's been many marriages that didn't make it. And there's a few that became stronger. It's all about the attitude that each person brings with with them to the marriage in that area and how they discuss it with each other. And there's lots of tools out there available. And marriage counseling is by far a very excellent tool to get a neutral party in there to say, okay. But they need to also understand what fibromyalgia is if they're going to be any help in having both parties understand how difficult it is for each other as well.
certainly, certainly.
So,
There does need to be, the understanding. I also think not only can a partner be burdened, but the person with fibromyalgia a lot of times will feel guilty
oh,
for
certainly.
imposing this burden.
Yes,
Or
they
in
love their
added,
spouse or significant other, and they don't want them having to do stuff for them that they're used to doing. A horrendous guilt can come up for them, but they
right,
have
it's
to.
not only having the things done, but not being able to give what you used to be able to give.
And
Uh,
yes, even intimately, just the thought of being touched by
right,
some people is so painful. So then the spouse is thinking, why are they rejecting me? When in fact it has nothing to do with them at all. That they want more than anything, I'm certain, to be held and loved. But can they do it with the most gentlest of ease? It's just, think about it as having a severe case of flu that just never goes away. It's very scary, very, very scary. And
right,
then You
Well,
want
I
to,
think, you have a couple of different types of physical um, issues when it comes to touch. Well, several actually. You have people, like you said, that cannot bear to be touched because their tender points are so sensitive
correct.
and so widespread that
Oh,
almost
yeah,
any place you touch them is painful.
correct.
Then you have people like me who, um, one of my ways of relieving pain is to be held and to feel the contact of a loving person,
Yes,
um, that sort of soothes me
yes,
and helps me relax and not feel quite so much of the pain. And
yes.
I might want too much affection, more
Right. You
than
crave
my
it
partner might be willing to give
because it
or have
makes you
time for.
feel good
Um,
in two ways.
but there's also the issue of the limitation in movement.
Right?
When you're seized up with, um, everything stiff and sore through most of your body, it's hard to move.
Yes, it is. Very, and I tell you, sex can be one of the better exercises out there, that more enjoyable ones. But when you have fibromyalgia, now some people when they get into a heightened emotional state can detach from the pain. And that's
Right.
very cool, but not everybody can do that. And the ones who can't, and it's very hard to feel aroused, so to speak. And on top of that, as we talk about at the beginning of the show, there's 6 main areas in our lives that we all have to deal with. And then we may have sprinkles of another 75. But our sleep disorder is one that we all have in common, but to different degrees.
Right.
And that can generally, along with some of the other issues, deplete our hormones. And when your hormones are depleted, your interest sexually can be absent, just no interest. And the key there is really to get to a functional medicine doctor and, get your hormone levels checked. And there are natural ways to do that. But if you're not aware of that, you're gonna feel like that part of your life is over. And I never say it's over. I always say it's sleeping. It's still within
Right.
you. It just
Yes.
isn't activated, and
Exactly.
it can be re-energized. So don't ever think that that part of your life is over. You still have the capacity. It's just going to take finding the right doctor to work with you at your pace until you can get yourself back in balance. And those feelings will come back. Do not give up there.
Mhm.
And then we have the children who, from the younger ones who don't understand the medicine, that doesn't understand why mommy or daddy, men have fibro too, aren't being the parent that they're, why is mommy always in bed? Why is mommy not cooking? Why is, and they get very confused. And regardless of the age of our children, they're all going to feel the pain of it because it's that, you know, I can talk about anything I want about my mom, but you better not say anything about my mom. And they
Mhm.
they're left feeling that their mom used to be this invincible creature who made everything happen to seeing her humanity or his humanity, and that they are people that are vulnerable to all kinds of issues like everyone else. But, I know my mother was very healthy her entire life. And when she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, I mean, I had already had 3 children. I was an adult, and she would come visit. And one thing she enjoyed doing, and I didn't, was sewing on patches for my boys' Cub Scout uniforms. And one day she came over and she said, I can't do it. And her hands were all swelled up. And I mean, I remember that gut wrenching feeling of my mother is showing signs of age. And it really bothered me. And even, being an adult. So at any age, when you see a parent become ill, a lot of times the way kids deal with it is they don't acknowledge it. They just
Yes.
pretend it's not there. And there's a point where you have to give them information, but you can't harp on it, and putting expectations on them to act or be a certain way is not fair. They have to cope with that in their own way. And that
Right.
can be very, very difficult in a family structure.
And a couple of things about younger children in particular
Mm-hmm.
is they may feel responsible because um,
Yeah.
just in general they see what's happening in the world around them as um, reflecting on them as being something that's happening in response to them. And it's
Right.
only when they're older that they really are able to distinguish clearly, psychologically, the cause and effect of events
Right.
that have to do with their families and their parents and themselves in terms of what belongs to who.
Right.
And I didn't do it.
Right.
Um, and then the other thing is that um, I'm having a mental block
Well,
here, Laura.
it's okay. I had a couple tonight and they came back.
Fibro fog, fibro.
Yes, yes, yes. That's okay. We can move on unless you can pull
Yeah,
it back.
go ahead. It'll come back to me, and
That's
if it
okay.
fits in, we'll put it back in. Go ahead.
And then there's the distant relatives that you may call twice a year and send Christmas cards, but yet now we don't feel the energy, and that's something we may blow off. And your extended family, but those are still really important people to keep in your corner. You just don't know. I say we can never have too many friends or significant people or people in our world, whatever, related or friendship wise, but I admit that we can't give the time if we had, let's say, a dozen girlfriends to keep up the phone calls. And even a phone call can wear me out. It's not that I don't want to speak to somebody, but the thought of picking up the phone, my time that I have is so much more limited, and my phone calls seem to go on for like an hour, which I'm mostly responsible for. I keep perpetuating a conversation. I can't do a 10-minute call, it seems, which right there I should say red flag, write it down, work on that. uh, but so I have friends that have called me several times and I've yet to call them back because I haven't made the time to do it. And I have to feel like if I'm feeling good, then I'm going to be out doing other things. If I'm feeling bad, then I don't feel like picking up the phone. And it's not a reflection on them, but they don't know that unless I tell them. And I don't think I've ever really found the words until just kind of talking right now with you. Um, why that I procrastinate on that so much. But I do get a tongue lashing.
Well, you said exactly what I was going to say about parenting,
Okay.
but it does, of course, apply to all our relationships, and that is, we may tend to put things off. And, of course, with children, before you know it, they're grown and you
Oh,
wish you
yeah.
would have.
Right.
But with friends, as we age, the same thing happens. We lose them,
Yes.
and we wish we would have taken that time. And it's not always possible, but it might be good to set some time aside where you touch bases with people. Maybe on a Sunday afternoon,
Make it a
um,
time to
a-
call your
an
friends.
hour,
Hmm.
or even 15 minutes, depending upon what you're up to make a few calls and to reach out and contact a few people.
It means a lot
Uh,
to them, especially as it does to me. But they feel hurt when they leave a couple messages with no return call.
Right, right.
Yeah, I feel guilty. And I say, for me personally, God bless texting, because I can text somebody real quick and say, hey, I haven't forgotten you, just been, in my hole or behind time. I feel like I'm always running 2 days behind. And that's something I've got on my list to get better control of. So I can throw them a text and just say, I'm thinking about you, and I get a thank you. And that means at least it helps. Not quite the best source, but it's something.
Well,
So,
that and email, and I think, it's probably really helpful, and I should do this myself, and that is go through all these emails and get rid of the stuff that is not personal and that is not important.
yeah.
Take a day and unsubscribe to everything,
Yes.
or just toss it in
Yes.
the spam, and
Yes.
give a few minutes attention to those personal emails.
It's
Even if it's only to send a forward of something humorous or
yes.
touching, it says, I'm thinking of you and you haven't been forgotten.
Exactly. Yeah, it does. And I think I'll look at my inbox and I'll see how many emails are in there because I've left it for a couple days and then I become overwhelmed by the number that I just don't go there because
Right,
it's
right.
overwhelming. But yet there are people that have written that need a response, business wise or other, whether it's having to do with the support group or, you know, somebody needing help in there, and yet days go by and I have no idea they're waiting for a response. So listen, I'm telling on myself tonight, aren't I? All my weaknesses.
Well,
So
you're telling all of our stories. It's
yeah,
not just
I
yours.
understand. Yes, I agree.
So,
For those of my
and
friends who are listening, please hear me. I love you all. I do. I just have got to. I need to make a schedule and stick to it. And I mean, I have
well,
my getting up time and if I have doctor's appointments, but I need to make a radical change this year and put more detail into my routine because what I've been doing is not working because I'm running
well,
late
I
all the
think,
time. Huh?
well, be patient with yourself. I think on one hand, we do need to prioritize and decide what is important, and start with the people we have and our pets and everything that are immediately in our lives.
Yeah.
How do we take care of them?
Right.
And then beyond that, how do we reach out? Because I always say time is running faster than I am.
I feel the
And
same way.
it's true. It
Yeah.
does.
Yep.
And if we try to catch up with it and we can't get there, then we're chronically frustrated.
And stressed.
Sometimes you just need to say, I cannot do this now. That doesn't mean you can never do it.
Right.
But, I mean, I have had the experience of having having important things, what I considered important to get to or to do, and I have gotten ready to, prepared to leave, and realized that I was absolutely miserable and exhausted. And I either needed to just sit down and maybe leave in another half an hour,
Okay.
and sometimes just cancel altogether.
Now, what if it's a
And
doctor's appointment? How do you handle that?
well, it's a little different. I mean, I've heard people say I'm too sick to go to the doctor, which
It's
makes no sense at
true.
all.
I
That,
know.
that that's a little different. Usually, you can drag yourself there.
Yeah.
If you collapse into a chair and you're writhing and wincing and trying not to holler, they understand. They'll usually put
Sometimes.
you someplace where nobody can see you and you can suffer in silence. And maybe even lay down and have a pillow and blanket.
Yeah,
It's different than
I know.
trying to go to a party where people are going to be anything but happy if you're, unable to control your misery
Right.
when they're trying to have a good time,
Right. They don't want
or
the
something like
downers.
that.
They want us to stay home. But today I had an MRI, and I needed to have it done by a certain time. So it's done for the doctor. And, those people who do MRIs, and a lot of people are healthy who have MRIs. And yet, to me, I'm just sitting there and they want me to fill out all this paperwork. Yet, that's my place I go every time I have a radiology need. And I'm probably there, 6, 7 times a year. The same paperwork, and it's like if you guys knew how crappy I feel right now, and I'm gonna put this smile on because it's easier to deal with pleasant people than non-pleasant people, but it's just it's horrible sometimes to keep up with my medical commitments.
Oh, I know. I know. I sometimes have. Well, this week I've got 4 appointments.
That's slow
Um,
for me.
and I've had probably as many as 8 in a week.
Right.
It's just well, for one thing, I'm on a very intensive pain management program, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be up to 8 appointments a week,
Wow.
and it can go on and on and on. Right now I don't see any end to it. Um, and it gets to be that the people you see most are the medical people,
Right.
but the paperwork, if it's going to be repetitious and the same thing all the time,
Yes.
ask for a copy. And
Yes.
next time you go, you can give it to them,
Yes,
unless
doing the
something's
same
changed.
forms. That's a very good point. Now, I do, and I've shared this before, I always come with my own paperwork. I have 3 sheets: past surgeries, current health issues, and the third one is medications and supplements. And I have them on my
Exactly.
computer. Anytime something comes off or goes on, I just make a couple of changes and I update it each month. And I print out about 6 or 8 of all of them. So when they ask to fill out, what past surgeries have you had? I put see attached. They all ask, what are your medications? See attached. And many ask, what is your past surgical history? See attached.
Right.
But it's the, the,
And
the
allergies.
medication one is the
Allergies
most.
is another important thing, especially to medicines.
Yeah, that's the number one. And it's really important to share what supplements you're taking just as much as it is what prescriptions, because sometimes a few of those do not mix. And if they're going to be prescribing you something new, they do want to make sure they have a full and complete list of everything you're taking. So
Right.
please, and I can't sit down and write down all my past surgeries and dates, no way. I think I know the
I know.
number in my head. I think it's 16. But even when they ask me to write down what my current health issues are, I forget some of the bigger ones. I always remember fibromyalgia and sleep disorder, but then I'm like, okay, what else? And when I read my list, it's got 20 items on it. So it's pretty significant. And when I'm seeing a doctor for the first time, before they walk in, they're reading over these 3 pages. And when they come in the room, after a few minutes, they say, you weren't really what I was expecting. Because when you look at my
Yeah.
list and we have a conversation, I'm more high functioning than they expect, I think, as far as having a conversation. Um,
Right. Right. I have the same problem.
yeah,
When I'm feeling good.
right. Or even not. I mean, I still know how to fake it till you make it, I call it, to smile and to make eye contact and to listen and to respond regardless of what's going on. If the pain's high, I'll be wiggling a lot more. And I carry a notebook because I think my memory is better than it is. And I write down all the key factors that were discussed. And I also write down ahead of time, like in the waiting room, the key factors that I want to make sure I do discuss.
That's a
So,
good idea.
so I don't go,
And
oh, shoot. That's
Yeah.
brought me a lot of
Yeah.
success. I feel like somebody says, "So what do you do for a living?" I would like to say, "I'm a professional patient." I've learned the system of,
Yes, exactly.
how to
And,
deal
and
with
of course they
receptionists.
assume that, you're malingering when you say that.
Oh, of course, but you do learn to, what doctors don't want to hear. Like, oh, I read on the internet. That's the phrase, the beginning of a phrase. I was
Yes.
reading this in an article that most doctors, they feel like they're competing with the internet information, and they have no idea what sources these people are going to. Some of it's very valid, some of it's more up to date than they are, but they can't know that based on what this person's sharing. So I've learned just to tell them my problems and listen to what their suggestions would be. And if it's something that I've heard before or something that sounds new and interesting, but I can get a pretty good feel whether or not a medical provider has a reasonable amount of knowledge about fibromyalgia. If they don't, they can't be on my team. It would be futile for both of us. They're just
Yes.
never going to understand me. Even though everybody I see as a specialty and they know all about that particular area of the body, if they don't know about fibromyalgia, it's not gonna, they're not gonna understand me. And I know that not every single provider is going to go learn about fibromyalgia right now, but I do feel in time they're going to understand why it's so critical to understand how a fibro person functions differently with their medications, with treatment than an average patient. And I know we're way off topic here, but in hospitalization is another huge difference. My goal is that one day we will not only have the red wristbands that are there to say red flag, we have allergics, to whatever things, but a purple band that says, oh, this is a fibro patient. That means she may already be on a high level of pain medication, so what we would normally give our patients is not going to be enough for her. Or she's going to need to be in the hospital for an extra 2 days because she's going to be a little slower to heal. Or we need to have an air mattress on that bed before she gets out of recovery because she will not be able to make it on the mattresses that we have. This is just, it affects every element of the hospital. And I,
Well, those are things that should be evaluated um, when there's an initial assessment done by the physician and by the nurse.
yes, but
That
when it
they should
happens,
get a complete medical history and know that you're a fibro patient.
but the
Um,
nurses don't understand it. And even when the pharmacy goes to fill the drugs, they override it because they think, oh, that's insane. That's way too much medication for any patient. Although the doctor's already pre-approving it. And people just won't go back and relook at it. And I'm not
well, they,
speaking of my story. I'm talking about a lot of people that have had surgery and how they have been given less medication than what they were taking before they went in for the surgery.
well, speaking as a healthcare provider, I'm a registered nurse.
Yes.
I do need to say, on behalf of like the pharmacists,
Right.
um, ethically and morally, they do, and legally,
Right.
they're responsible for checking if there's an out of the ordinary dose ordered on a medication to
Right.
make sure that it's not an error
Correct.
before they fill it, because those things do happen and they can be dangerous and lethal to
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. But if the
Right.
doctor said he did his job, then where's the breakdown? Either the doctor didn't do his job to communicate that, whether it be, I don't know how, whether it's, directly with the pharmacy department or with the,
Pharmacy calls the physician or calls the nurse. If you're in the hospital, they're more likely to call the nurse, and the nurse calls the doctor.
unless it's 2 in the
Um,
morning. Then they don't
yeah,
want to bother
yeah,
you.
no. If it's a medication that has to be given um, uh, during the night, then the doctor has to be called.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
my personal experience, once
everybody
they
has a
didn't do it.
responsibility for making sure that's done and the patient gets the medication.
Yeah, I think I've just had very poor outcomes with my previous surgeries, and the communication breakdowns. None of them have turned out positive, and to the point now where I've learned what I've got to make sure is clear and set up, and
Right.
then the most important key is to have a patient advocate there to speak for you when you cannot speak for yourself, like when you're in recovery or in the surgery, to have them making sure those things are getting taken care of, because
Yeah.
it's redundancy over and over again, and that way somebody else can be pleading your case when you're not in the right mind to do so.
That's true. But a lot of times that happens when assessments are done and they've got the information because you've given it to them.
Correct.
And then they don't bother to look at them before they write orders.
Right. They
Or
just
fill orders.
treat you like a typical patient with the typical surgery, and this is what they typically give.
Right, right.
And that seems to be where there's a little bit of a problem. And I just want,
Right.
that's why I want that purple wristband. So we're years away from that, I fear.
Well, I think what's going to happen, I mean, I understand what you're saying, I really do. But wristbands, we can go crazy with them. Pretty soon we'll be wearing rainbows all the way up to our elbows.
I know.
Nobody
get
will know
that.
what any of them mean.
But you find any other
But
disorder like fibromyalgia, and I'll give you a blue ribbon.
I really think what's going to happen is that the more they're able to see the relationship between one condition and another, the more likely that people from all the different specialty areas are going to be able to recognize the common illness.
Yes.
For instance, we are prone to the sleep disorders, as you said.
Yes.
I've also had several episodes of ischemic colitis, which is bleeding from the bowel, which I do think may have a relationship to fibromyalgia. I haven't really
they say we all have a
enough to say
digestive
for sure.
disorder at one level or another. So
Right, okay.
I would agree that
And then
that is.
what they do with medical conditions is they learn eventually by seeing enough people that all these different things tend to go together in this one illness.
Yep.
And then they look for those things.
Right.
So if you go see a gastroenterologist, they may say, well, do you also have tender spots and muscle pain and whatever? And they recognize that your reason for coming there is related to something that has to do with fibromyalgia.
Right.
That's how it happens.
Yes.
But it's going to take a lot of people being seen, research being done. But I'm hopeful that we're getting there because, the first step is to recognize fibromyalgia as a real physical problem.
Absolutely.
And then to sort out what causes it and all the different things that go along with it.
We're making it little by
we're
little.
We're making progress.
I do want to bring up something that's off topic, but yet I think it's critical to bring out on the table that's going on right now. I don't know if your knowledge is of this, but anybody right now who is disabled and is receiving a check from SSDI, they recently passed a law that by March 1st, if you don't have a checking account, you're not going to get a check. Have you heard that?
It's probably, my guess, an issue of government cutbacks and wanting to save the work and expense of writing or printing checks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really handy to have direct deposit. You don't have to have a lot of money in the bank.
It doesn't affect me. but now I'm working closely, excuse me, with Yes United, which is basically run by Becky Forcell, and she works with all disabled people. And
Right.
she was the one sharing the information. And of course, she's a lobbyist. And so, right now, what she's doing is putting together teams to go help each and every disabled person who doesn't have a checking account that they're aware of, to help them get to the bank and get one opened up. Um, some of them have horrible credit since their health declined, and some banks aren't very willing to open an account, even. But if you have a direct deposit for a check, they will. But people like there's several people when they don't have a job. Um, I was amazed how many people don't have checking accounts. It's not my world that I'm used to, but there is a thinking out there that people would rather live by cash. So
Right.
now you put a disabled person who's used to getting their check in the mail, and they probably go and cash it at the local wherever and get their money orders to make their bill payments. Um, it's going to flip them on their ear. It's going to be it's very scary that they're
Well,
going to have to create a new
it's
system.
an adjustment. It certainly is.
And what
But
about
in the long run, if you think about it, I mean, they're very well maybe people that we need to think about helping do that
absolutely,
among our Fibro friends as well.
right.
But in the long run, you're saving the money for the money orders, the trip to the
I
store,
agree.
um,
And you can
stamps, envelopes, pens,
and I do
paper.
online banking, so I can pay my bills from my bedroom, and I don't have to put one stamp. Now,
Exactly.
a lot of these people don't have the money for internet, and then to pay for to pay for the internet and a computer. Some people who were just a housewife and work here and there, their income runs around $800 a month, and
Right.
you just can't afford those extras. So,
Well, fortunately, computers are getting cheaper, and
yes,
they're available in the public library.
yes, and
Or if you have a trusted friend, and I do mean trusted, if you're going
yes,
to, have your bank information on their
right.
computer, then those are possibilities. Or a family member, a neighbor.
Right.
Just make sure it's someone you know and that is
It's
trustworthy.
just one more thing to add to their plate of things and challenges that they're dealing with every day.
That's true. So I think the big thing though is to get them over the hump, to help them get over the hump. There's no doubt that government spending has to be cut back.
I get
But
that. I get that 100%. But I
right,
just want to get the word out that this law has passed. And
good.
and I can say you can go to yesunited.org to contact that organization for help. That I can tell you off the top of my head. And I'm using this as a wrap up note right now because we're down to our last minute. Um, but I wanted to make sure to get that information out there because there's not much time left before their checks are going to stop coming. And I got this information from Yes United. So go to yesunited.org. Yes, here we just said you don't have a computer or internet, but and ask them where to go to get help to open a checking account. Go to the library, do whatever you can to get to that website. So thank you so much for being a guest speaker again, Jesse. As always, it's a true pleasure to have you on the show. And I hope that in the near future you will join me again. Any
Thank you.
final
I'd love
words?
to see the new studio, and
Oh,
it's been an
yes.
honor to speak with you this evening.
Okay,
And
that's good.
I do think that you stuck to the topic of relationships. We have relationships with our physicians and healthcare providers and with our government. And we have to think of those things in that way so that we can advocate for ourselves and feel that we have a right to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse. Good night.
Good night.
Remember, fibromyalgia can strike any person at any age. If you feel that you may be suffering from fibromyalgia, please contact your medical provider as soon as possible for proper diagnosis and a treatment plan that works for you. We are not a replacement for professional medical advice, but we are your Fibro Friends for advocacy and education and support. We encourage you to share via email, Facebook, or Twitter through a link from any of our shows that can be found on our website at fibrofriendsradioshow.com and on Facebook at Fibro Friends Radio Show, with your doctors, support system of friends and family, and your fellow Fibro friends. Remember, laughter is still the best medicine, so share the Fibro funny today and keep a smile on your face and in your heart. So pass this Fibro Friends smiling, gentle hug full of love to someone in pain today, because it's always the love that heals.